Hello, 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 ladies and gentlemen. Let's get it cooking. It's a go time and it's MF. It's mother trouble. This will not be a scuff session like last time. This time, I got it all sorted. I am the man with the plan today, son. I just got to make sure that I stay focused all night long. Yes, I know, my singing voice is absolutely atrocious. Bear with me, because I'm probably not going to stop. I mean, I'm not going to do like break out into like no actual songs, but you know, I'm going to do that little sing song thing I just did probably quite a few times before this night is over. If you don't like it, I apologize. I really do. You give me a way to fill in the space when my brain does the little fart thing it does a better way, and I will take it into consideration for sure. But until then, that's kind of become my go-to. We got some good philosophical content for the day, but before we jump into that, we got to get our initial rotations down, so I'm nice and in the zone before I start distracting myself with all the deep things. Yes, sir. Oh, I'm big there. I'm fixed. Let's get it, boys. I want this guy. Did I get it? I think I got it. Yeah, baby. Hit the nail on the head. We in this bitch. We in this motherfucker. Alright, now we got these bitches doing gay stuff. Well, that took care of it. I hate when they split up like that. I didn't realize one of you lived. We got him though. That was clean, boys. That was about as clean as it gets. This is never 100% clean, I promise you that. Oh, shit. They ran out of my favorite drinks in the store today. So I'm sipping on the tangy orange flavor instead. And let me tell you what, that tangy orange flavor, that ain't it. That really ain't it. But you can't drink, you can't drink, you can't beat the percentage by volume per dollar, which is a mouthful to say, but yeah, these boys hit. If you know what I'm saying. This is a really small pack I'm doing because I can't do these guys and the rest of the guys at the same time. Draw them together takes too much out of me. So since I can't do that, I just gotta fucking throw this little 3-pack before I move on to the big boys, the next actual real size pack. Pack mobs. Pack of human scum that must be cleansed from this earth in Sylvance's name. But low-key, no, I don't think that's so false. Because I'm psychic and I know that she's gonna become a bitch, and she's always been a bitch, really. And she's gonna become even more of a bitch. I wonder if Twitch has a problem with the word bitch. I hope not. Or YouTube. YouTube I know for sure does. And we're still within that like early portion of time with YouTube, so I definitely probably lost myself some problems on marketability, on the marketability front. But screw it. We're doing this for the real ones, not for anybody else. Well, this was decent. We got a decent little farming run done there. Also, dude, it feels so good having Kona Cold. I forgot how late in the game you get that freaking spell. Which I mean, it's not actually late, but like, so you know, I started my AoE farming when I was level 23. It took me 3 levels before I could finally get what I consider one of your most basic tools for AoE farming. Ridiculous. Anyway, now I want to see if we can get this guy and then still do another pack before the packs behind me respawn. This guy's got to be done. Damn it, separately though. Why, you might ask? Well, it's usually because he's a level higher than he freaking is right now. It's actually only level 25. Normally that mob is level 26. There's a chance for him to spawn either 25 or 26 every time he spawns. So next time he'll probably be 26. I dealt with him like he was already 26. Because he usually is. And the mobs behind me are already respawning. Which, I mean, they're the easier ones to do anyway, so whatever. It is kind of an indication that I was a little slow going though. So I kind of need to try to speed it up, but at the same time, like, consistency is key. So as long as I'm out here doing it, bro, it really doesn't matter if I'm not going optimal speeds. As long as I get them down, boy. As long as I'm putting the hours in. As long as I'm cooling the herd, so to speak. Guys are bitches. Ate a decent chunk of my HP though. Luckily, I had some to spare, because I would have been screwed otherwise. I would have been straight effed in the... Hey. Why my brain shows the shut off words. Shut off in the middle of that particular sentence? I don't know. Maybe. Because I low-key subconsciously wish to submit to my YouTube lords and appease them. Because I don't consciously want to. Like, I played the game a little bit for them on a conscious level, but subconsciously. I might want to have more people to talk to badly enough to, you know, kind of subconsciously shift what I'm doing, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes it'd be like that. Ooh. was looking at my stream and almost missed that freaking blizzard timing. These guys don't never want to die the same freaking rate, bro. They always want to split. Two of them are freaking not ready to run. But the other two are ready to take off for the freaking promised land. Off into Narnia. It is a little annoying. After this rotation, which we're about finished with, we'll go pull up the extra content. It's about time to do the big things. And talk about the stuff that really rustles my feathers. No, not just, that's just what's the phrase I really wanted? Rows my boat? Yeah, we'll go with that. Floats my boat, that's what it is. It floats your boat. Dude, I feel like the guy from Boondock Saints. You can't take the heat. Fuck off. Or some shit, like how everybody actually says. He always mix up phrases. Instead of you can't take the heat, get out the character, he'd be like, if you can't take the heat, then don't throw stones or something like that. Yeah, I wish I remembered exactly what he said. I used to actually know all this by heart. And I had a mix CD at one point in time that was named after one of his BS little misquotes. It's a good CD too. I can't remember if I had made that CD or if it was my girlfriend at the time that made the CD, because we both like to make mix CDs. This was back in the days, not really before MP3, but like, it was like before like Bluetooth for sure. It was like at the cusp of the smartphone era, really. It was back in good old 2009. Most of y'all are probably too young to know shit about 2009. I bet most of y'all buckos were like 5 years old or something. I don't know. Maybe if you find your way here, you probably should argue that. I've just been thinking about the average Twitch viewership. Really words again. The average Twitch viewer age. Again, I don't know why these things just fucking me sometimes. My brain be doing too many things at one time. At least that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. That's my story. Anybody knows that Shania Twain song? My parents were big in the country. I'm not exactly a big Shania Twain fan. Damn, do I not know that song, boy. Hopefully the chick doesn't show up, because there's a chick that pats this way. If I get a new pat mid fucking pool, it is not gonna go well. Got him. We killed that bucko. We got that there bucko boy. Right there. ugly human peasant. And that's complete rotation. So, as I promised, let's cut to more stimulating content, shall we say? Which means first, I need to bring the music to a close. Sorry, the metal was nice, but it is not conducive to what we're doing now. We need to do a quick UI swap. Damn, the UI swap made my audio go out, I think. Was not aware that it was going to do that. I did not think that it was going to do that. It was going to do that. Oh, and of course my tab is like...
Hello, everyone.
Oh, okay, here we go.
Welcome to episode 7 of the Exodus seminar, where we just finished chapter 14 yesterday. We're going to try to get through 15 and 18 today. I'll introduce everybody as I have been. Participants on my right, Jonathan Pajot, Stephen Blackwood,
I got ballsy as shit with this one.
Greg Hurwitz, and Oz Guinness. We closed yesterday with the image of the Israelites
I got ballsy as shit with this pool.
along their pathway as they move further out of Egypt by a pillar of fire during the night and a pillar of cloud during the day, and commented on the analogy between that and the place between them, and that the cloud, the pillar of cloud
We got a bail.
during the day is darkness in the day, and the pillar of fire at night is light during the night. So that's another echo.
Oh, I gotta pause this. We got a bail, boys. That actually started off way better than it should have, given how ballsy I was with it. But it devolved. It fucking devolved, son. Holy guacamole. Did it go to shit? It went to hell in a handbasket, you know. As the saying goes. See, I can remember that saying at least. Which is fitting, because we're on a biblical series right now. Okay. Maybe we try this again, and this time, we act like a normal fucking human being. You know, just maybe. Just maybe. Also, I feel like the low end of my voice is like the quiet part of my voice, because I'm sometimes like quieter than I am louder. I struggle keeping a consistent volume. I think when I'm a little bit quieter, my mic cuts out. I think my what you call it? What is it called? Not the EQ, the noise gate. I think my noise gate might be dialed in a little too high. But I don't want to mess with it because it sorts out a lot of the background noise really well. And I just need to get better at doing the right things with my voice. So today we'll just practice speaking at a more consistent volume rather than messing with the audio any more than I already have had to do. Fuck. It's gonna be a long day if I keep struggling to talk this much. We have an ad. We have an ad in chat. These things be annoying. I don't remember how to do what I want to do in response to this. Damn it. One of these days, I do need to learn how to mod my channel, bro. Ah, I figured out the controls. Hell yeah. Get banned. Get out of here trying to sell your freaking porn on my goddamn stream. Fuck off. Anyway, we can get back to the thinking content now, and this time I can actually focus on it. So I'm going to take it nice and slow with AoE, and therefore I am not going to be distracted and able to focus on what the hell we got going on.
And that the cloud, the pillar of cloud during the day is darkness in the day, and the pillar of fire at night is light during the night. So that's another echo.
Yin and yang, baby.
We ended with 14:24 to 31, which describes the actual crossing of the Red Sea and the decimation of the Egyptians. We need to comment on that. We're going to go through the first part of chapter 15, which is a song devoted to that event, and then we'll cover all that territory and move forward. And so I'll start with Exodus 15:1. Then sang Moses and the children of Israel this song unto the Lord, saying, for he hath gloriously, hath he thrown into the sea. The Lord is my strength and song, and he has become my salvation. He is my God, and I will prepare him a habitation, my father's God, and I will exalt him, place to live, a reference to the historic nature of that God, and the exaltation is to be placed in the highest place. The Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his host hath he cast into the sea.
Okay, before we go further down to 1 through 6, or what are we at? There are 3? Yes. So hold on. Let's run that back slide, because was that just 1 and 2? That was just 1 and 2. Okay, so before we move on to 3, I gotta readdress the end of 2. I think it was the end of 2. Anyway, that last segment, because I think it's important to note that he says he's going to make a home for the Lord. And it's not because the Lord needs a home. It's because he wants to make God's presence felt among his people. He wants his presence to nest amongst them, as if it which is an interesting concept, because you actually have to. The divine will is omnipresent, but to make its force felt, you must offer it into your home. You must invite it into your home. It's interesting that the reality works that way. That even though good is omnipresent and omnipotent, only by doing good, focusing on good, and having a certain amount of humility, can you feel the force of good as it moves in the world.
Pharaoh's chariots and his host hath he cast into the sea. His chosen captains also are drowned in the Red Sea.
Also, let's hit this beginning portion too. So, the Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name. So, considering the Lord a man of war is just denoting one aspect. You know, normally it's an aspect that's a little bit contradictory to the main, what they consider the mainstay principles of God, which is truth, love, light, and peace. And war is very juxtaposed to the peace one in particular, but really all of them. Maybe not truth to such a great extent, but definitely to the rest of them. It's pretty juxtaposed against it. But God is a paradoxical being. So it should not be surprising that thus is the case. But why is he a man of war? That's because God is omnipotent and in constant conflict with the adversary that he brought into being because it is the only way to offer free will to man. He is in constant combat against the adversary, the devil. So this is being denoted here in particular, well, because they might be coming to battle with an enemy host, but also because they've, made a pact with God at this point. And it's worth noting that the being who you've made a pact with is not a helpless being, but a mighty one willing to go to war.
The depths have covered them. They sank into the bottom as a stone. Thy right hand, O Lord, is become glorious in power. Thy right hand, O Lord, hath dashed in pieces the enemy. I believe that often the right hand of God is associated with justice, and we can return to that. And in the greatness of thine excellency, thou hast overthrown them that rose up against thee. Thou sentest forth thy wrath, which consumed them as stubble. And with the blast of thy nostrils the waters were gathered together. The floods stood upright as a heap, and the depths were congealed in the heart of the sea. The enemy said, I will pursue, I will overtake, I will divide the spoil. My lust shall be satisfied upon them. I will draw my sword, my hand shall destroy them. Thou didst blow with thy wind. The sea covered them. They sank as lead in the mighty waters. Who is like unto thee, O Lord, among the gods? Who is like thee, glorious in holiness, fearful in praises, doing wonders? Thou stretchedst out thy right hand. The earth swallowed them. Thou in thy mercy hast led forth the people which thou hast redeemed. Thou hast guided them in thy strength unto thy holy habitation. The people shall hear and be afraid. Sorrow shall take hold on the inhabitants of Palestina. The dukes of Edom, the mighty men of Moab, trembling shall take hold upon them. All the inhabitants of Canaan shall melt away. Fear and dread shall fall upon them. By the greatness of thine arm, they shall be as still as the stone, till thy people pass over, O Lord, till the people pass over, which thou hast purchased. Thou shalt bring them in, and plant them in the mountain of thine inheritance, in the place, O Lord, which thou hast made for thee to dwell in the sanctuary. Sounds like a prodroma to the ark idea. Which to dwell in the sanctuary, O Lord, established, shall reign forever and ever. For the horse of Pharaoh went in with his chariots, and with his horsemen into the sea. And the Lord brought again the waters of the sea upon them. But the children of Israel went on dry land in the midst of the sea. And Miriam the prophetess.
That's such an image, and I know everybody's familiar with it, but let's take a minute, just a short minute to really reflect on that image, man. So they go forth as they were sent away from Pharaoh, let go, as it were, and then he decides, never mind, fuck them. Gather up the chariots, gather my men, we're gonna run them down. We'll show them they can't just run off and do whatever they please. And so they see these guys in the distance coming up on them. And Moses, beseeches God, and then God divides the waters of the fucking sea, which is just an outlet to the ocean. It's a body of water you can't even see the other side of. So they go into the split waters, walking along the fucking, wet, sandy ground, which is probably not very comfortable. If you ever try to go on wet sand, it's not the most pleasant thing. Especially something that's thoroughly saturated. It's like the bottom of a sea. And then they're also like probably in a hurry because they got this army on their tail, so they're actually trying to run through it. Not a good time for them. And they make a little headway in, and then, the Pharaoh and his riders and all see, okay, well, this is kind of crazy, but, if they can go through that, then we can go through that, just ride down and get them. And then part of the sea stays open, and part of the sea closes behind them, and the crashing waves destroy the entire approaching army. Meanwhile, these guys are just trying to run on the freaking bottom of the seafloor with walls of ocean water on either side of them, and probably in front of them as well, because it's probably like continuing to split open as they walk. So that's how I imagine it. Gotta be the most terrifying mindfuck of a situation you could think of. But also, ballsy move on the part of the Pharaoh and his men, because Jesus, I would not have done that. That sounds like a dumbass idea.
The sister of Aaron took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out after her with timbrels and with dances. And the king answered them, "Sing to the Lord." That's quite a song. "For he hath triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider hath he thrown into the sea." And that essentially ends in triumph and celebration, the crossing of the Red Sea. And so we start with the pillar and fire. This is back to 1424. God's decimation of the Egyptian chariots. Then the utter catastrophic dissolution of the Egyptian army in the chaotic waters.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's very important is to understand the relationship, first of all, between the flood and this situation. So there's a repetition and pattern between the end of the old world and also the end of the civilization of Cain. It's very important to understand before the flood there was this kind of high civilization, and metallurgy is like the last thing that is developed by Cain's descendants in order bringing them, and war and all these things, bringing them up to the flood. And so we have this image where now as they're crossing the civilization, that's why the chariots are so important. It's like this technological aspect that the Pharaoh had, destroyed by the waters of chaos. Like all the order, all these weapons, all this stuff that you have developed is being crushed.
Right, because Tubal-Cain is the last of Cain's descendants, right? And by tradition, he's the first artificer of weapons.
Yeah.
Right, and that's part of the degeneration of the spirit of Cain into the technology that's used to wage wars.
Definitely. Of a broken civilization, or a civilization that's gone to become degenerate, basically. But technology is actually part of it. If you don't understand that, it's going to be hard to understand also the establishment of the idea of an altar of uncut stone, where we have to recreate this pure space of like pure space. And so if you look at the image, all the images in the text of the song can help you understand what's going on. You have this image of God, the right hand, the wind, the breath, all of these things are the actions of God, this glory, all of this raising up. Then you have the waters, the falling back onto the waters, the deep, the earth swallowed them, all these images and it says like, the deep has pulled them down, all of these images. And then afterwards, we're going to the mountain, and the mountain you'll be planted like new seedlings. The mountain, the sanctuary, the mountain is now a temple of worship. All of these images are showing us like what is...
That's an alternative to the tyranny.
That's right, exactly. It's like a return to the garden.
This isn't the way to understand uncut stone. Isn't the rest of the stone like that's an unusual way to differentiate? Is that right? Historically,
Not in the first altar that is asked of them. It's an altar of uncut. So later it'll be different.
No, meaning that, but specifying that it's uncut stone here is a break from tradition. Is that right?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But for sure, you'll see. We haven't gotten there yet. But
Okay, so
I'm just trying to show you the pattern.
We have a tyranny that doubled down, and then we have the beginning of the Exodus, and then we have the Israelites up against the sea, and then we have the final attempt by the Egyptians to use the technology of war against them, and then we have the complete destruction of that by chaos itself. So we have the degeneration of tyranny into complete chaos, and then
it's not just chaos.
It's properly constructed as an antidote to that.
And it's important to understand it's not just chaos. It's like
Hold up. We got to run that part back.
chaos.
Mountain
It's
properly constructed as
slightly more.
complete chaos, and then
it's not just chaos.
It's properly constructed as an antidote to that.
And it's important to understand it's not just chaos.
What is he saying? The mountain? I think we can turn on subtitles. Hold on, boys. We gotta get into the weeds with this a little bit real quick.
Complete chaos, and then
it's not just chaos. It's
properly constructed as an antidote.
So I'm pretty sure he's saying mountain. The closed captioning does not support it, but I'm pretty sure that is what he says. I'm pretty sure, but it is hard to say. So I want to. Well, all right. We'll look at this how this continues real quick, and then we'll readdress it afterwards. I just need to not forget my place, and we might have to rewind a little bit, but we'll see.
And it's important to understand it's not just chaos. It's really is the separation of heaven and earth. That's when the world ceases to exist. There's an image of both the waters, but then also the breath of God above, and God acting
Just the
above.
clash of the.
Okay, so yeah, they're signifying. So that's what I was thinking about with like the mountain thing. So like the mountain touches the sky. It's where the earth meets the sky. So differentiating factor here is describing how there is a separation between the divine and the I don't want to just say material, but like the mundane. And these two things meet at the congruence of great change. And it's going to entail a lot of chaos. That's what change always entails. But it's chaos used with a certain kind of precision, which is again kind of paradoxical, but it is chaos implemented with a certain precision at the moment in which the divine meets the mundane. That is the formula that overthrows tyranny, which is pretty on the nose for our time, if you think about it.
The primordial elements, that's more than the chaos, because it's the clash of the primordial elements, part of the generative potential.
I think it's really the separation that brings about that's what brings about the flood, is when the ideas are too high and the embodiment is too low. Right? It doesn't match. It's like a good idea. It's like flying cars. Like flying cars is a great idea, but it'll never land. It'll never join with reality because it's an idea that's too high, and the potential that is wanting to hold it is not even capable of holding it. And so won't exist. Or maybe one day it will, but at least for now, because they won't join together. You need something above, like an idea, you need a purpose, and you need a body that can hold that purpose. And when you don't have those together, then you don't have a world, whatever world that is.
So he's kind of describing it here where like the point of the joining of the divine and the mundane is a representation of, I don't even want to call it representation, because I mean it's really a direct statement. You just have to understand the terms properly. But anyway, it's a statement of proper mode of being. It's an alignment with like the logos, the logical brain, and the intuitive spiritual aspect of the unconscious mind, and they're in alignment on a macro scale, amongst a large group of people that are under the force of tyranny. Then they unleash chaos to implement change, which is not like a cosine of like anarchy or anything. It's just that war and revolution. I mean, it's a chaotic endeavor. But all of these elements are always the case every time this historically happens. Every single time.
There's no proper covenant like the Tower of
That's
Babel.
right,
in a way.
exactly.
It's a sort of symbol of human pride that reaches out, but it's never
It
connected.
doesn't reach.
I'd like to point out the last verse in 14, right before this, is, when Israel saw the Lord, that's the one I'm using.
The respawn happened.
The
It's
people
too slow.
feared the Lord, they had faith in the Lord and his servant Moses. So I'm just repeating a point, but it's such an important point to help people who are grappling with faith, that here they are, they just saw the most incredible miracle of all, transcending even the 10 plagues, the crushing of Pharaoh's army. They are walking through a sea that allows them dry land. Now they fear God and believe in God and believe in Moses. They have faith, or really have faith in both.
For at least 3
This will,
days.
yes, this will last, right, you can count it in hours. That is just, again, it's brilliant that it has that line. Hey, guess what? They just saw this and they have faith for a totally finite amount of time.
And this is always the case every single time. You can look at it again historically. Faith comes in spurts, usually happens during the lowest times in human history. And it's never permanent. Miracles and triumphs give a temporary boost to faith, but faith itself is something that has to be thoughtfully and consciously embraced for it to stick. And even then, it will wane to a certain degree. It will wax and wane. And that's part of free will, because you if it was omnipresent, the moment it was presented to you strong, the moment you experienced a miracle, then it was just seated in you. Then you now have faith and it will never go away. Well, then you don't have free will, because now your mind has been made up for you. People ask all the time about why is there evil in the world. It's because you have free will, because there is no other way for you to be free than for you to be able to do wrong, and for the wrong of the world to hold just as much influence, potentially speaking, not fully literally, because again, people are creatures of habit and they build up their choices and then their actions reflect what they've built upon. But anyway, roughly speaking, both good and evil have to have the same potential to impact you. If they don't, then you don't have free will.
Miracles don't work, and people should not rely on them for faith.
Well, that's the difference between faith and proof in some sense, right?
That's that's good. That's right. Yes.
Oh,
And even if you get proof, it doesn't last. Miracles proves.
Inadequacy. Well, the thing about proof in some sense, if you think about it technically, proof can't work in relationship to the horizon of the future. Because if it's true that the future differs qualitatively from the past, which seems to be the case, that it's literally not predictable, then even if something did work in the past, just because the future. And so that means that in some real sense, I think this is fundamentally true. In some real sense, you cannot confront the horizon of the potential of the future without faith. That is what you use to confront that. Because otherwise it's...
Oh, yeah, no. Absolutely that's true. Absolutely that's true. You don't know what the fuck's going to happen tomorrow. And humans don't deal with unknown very well. And it is proven to them time and time again that history is not a valid indicator in a constant basis. Now, it does hint and give a lot of good context, but it's not a 100% consistent indicator of what the future is going to be like. And it's only somewhat close in a manner, like when you look at the freaking massive broad scale and only the broad strokes. When it comes to a man's day-to-day life, like, he does not know what the future is going to hold at all. He operates off the faith that it will be a future worth living in, a future worth striving for. And it is nothing but faith. If you think about it to any real degree, it is only faith that sustains us. The only question is, how strong is your faith and where does it lie?
Mere repetition of the past, in which case it's not really the future at all. It's not potential. And so that must be associated too with that the idea of the word that confronts potential at all time. That's serving something like faith in the ability of potential to bring forth the order that is good. So you can confront it otherwise. And so
science, the natural sciences need a degree of faith, a degree of credence when you're trying to sort of make predictions, as scientists are trying to make predictions and apply hypotheses. You're right, there is.
Well, the faith would be that which corrects your prediction, expect the prediction to be true, but object corrects your presupposition is good, and that making contact with it serves the good.
Yeah, by regularities, patterns, and life orders.
Well, otherwise you'd think more like Prometheus, right? You'd think, well, we don't want to make contact with the transcendent object as scientists because we'll be presumptuous, it'll just destroy us. Like, you could easily, and there's some reason to think that way because God only knows what you're going to discover scientifically, but that isn't how scientists orient themselves. They think, well, we're following our internal logos and we're making contact with the logos of the world, and if we do that diligently and ethically, then the result will be good. That's a replication of the biblical pattern.
Why secularists never have a view of...
So to simplify what he just said, in case anybody needs it, maybe you don't, maybe you do, but in case anybody needs it, to simplify what he just said, by my will contacting the will in a meticulous and careful manner, and having a negotiation there within, I can be certain to produce good results in my life. Or, to further simplify, I have the faith to think that if I work through my problems logically, and the world itself has an underlying logic to it, and I interact in good faith with that logic, then I will come up with credible ways of progressing my own life in a positive manner. Now, people don't think about that as a religious or spiritual thought. They think that is like the basics of. They really do. They think about it as the basics of the scientific approach and of the modern methodology of man. But it's not. It's really a lot deeper than that, because the logical leap that's taken and taken for granted is that the world is a logically ordered place. And you don't know that. Just because you find certain aspects of order, you also find a lot of chaos. To decide that the world is ultimately an ordered construct is a massive leap of faith that basically every scientist takes for granted. It's crazy that that's not a addressed topic. By the way, I logged out to come to the screen real quick. See that right there? Prometheus? Yes, I know it's spelled wrong. Okay. The proper spelling version was taken. All right. I can spell it correctly. I know how to spell it correctly, but anyway. Prometheus. Freaking great story. Great character. I mean, the character's not so great. I mean, it's not like the character has that much depth to him, but great freaking story. The great icon. There you go. You know, great deific image. To the extent I've named many characters after him.
Freedom. Because cause and effect is always looking back.
Right.
And you can't look forward to the scientific method.
Yeah, well, the thing is, in some sense, at that point, science devours itself, because I don't think there's any credible scientific evidence that we're deterministic. And I think there's a fair bit of credible scientific evidence that not only are we not, but we can't be, and neither is the world.
Well, it's more that there couldn't possibly be scientific evidence that we are free. Because the determinist just says it takes a step of faith. It says that all our actions can be explained, all our behavior can be explained in terms of physical causes and physical effects. But the person who believes in free agency just gives an exhaustive account of how we act. Now, there's no scientific way to settle that. You might say, look, I believe that I'm free, I believe that I can lift up this cup, and I believe that more firmly than any skeptical argument you could bring.
Penrose certainly believes that we cannot compute the horizon of the future deterministically. And so, even if we don't have free will, something that isn't deterministic.
Penrose does believe in proofs. He comes up with the famous Penrose singularity theorem. And he's a kind of Platonist as well. I think we talked about this before. So if you're kind of you can say that there are mathematical proofs. There are proofs in the kind of timeless Platonic heaven.
World.
Sure, but they couldn't be in this, as it were, in the physical order. So we'd be perfectly happy giving kids mathematics textbooks from the 1950s if they could still kind of understand them. We'd be very worried if we were giving kids physics textbooks from the 1950s because science is moving along all the time. And so there's just not, that skepticism is healthy in scientific inquiry. In fact, you can almost guarantee that science is in 20, 30, 40 years' time. And yet it's acquired this kind of sacred status of scientific knowledge. This is actually the source of all certainty.
Well, science is actually the process, not the consequence in some real sense.
You sound like a science denier.
Well, certainly. Well, one of the things you learn, Thomas kind of pointed this out too, is that it's very you cannot teach people
That is a great freaking phrase. A science humbler. Something that the modern science realm needs drastically is humility. They have run amok with their egos. And it's no wonder why. They're at the extreme end of utilization of logic. And the logic is the primary realm of operation of the ego. I mean, I guess self-service is the primary realm of the operation of the ego, but that's only under an unattended child version of ego. Like, the thing that the skill the ego excels at is the implementation of logic. So that you have this lack of humility amongst this egotism amongst the most logically minded group of people in the world is not a surprising thing to discover by any stretch. So humbling science now and again is probably a really worthwhile endeavor.
to be a scientist. You cannot teach a person to be a scientist by teaching them scientific doctrines or scientific facts. Because people like to think of science as a collection of facts, but if you look at how science is practiced, it's actually primarily an apprenticeship. You go into a lab with a scientist who's a practitioner and researcher, and most of that, some of it's technical, some of it's administrative, but a huge part of it is ethical. And that's especially true on the statistical front, because if you don't treat the revelation of your experiment 100% ethically, you won't discover anything that's real, and you'll warp your career in the scientific enterprise. So fundamentally, what you're apprenticing in is an ethic of humble approach and responsibility. And that's the embodied training as a scientist. And no one says that in a scientific paper because it's a given. But it's not an obvious given when you start to think about it philosophically.
This is also the Larry was bringing up last night about teachers being taught teaching methods rather than having a philosophical basis from which to teach. And we see this a lot
It's
in
the reduction of
Hollywood
things
where
to method.
right, where there's a lot of courses and programs and degrees and certificates that teach you writing, and you can study writing all the way through, but then you have all the craft of writing. Then what are you going to write about? Right. You and I, we talk about this a lot, about that, the dislocation between avatars of meaning and what they're supposed to be attached to. It's like there's this floating away. And it's sort of like the senseless rote work that's removed from the undergirding meaning. In all these fields.
And the attempt to reduce to method.
Well, in the ethic you talk about, one of the maddest, maybe.
So, BTW, by the way, reduce to method. It's also a nice succinct phrase. So, if you think about like a cake, for instance, can I explain to you a cake, like what a cake is, by describing what it looks like? No, that gives you part of it. Now, maybe you can intuit a lot of information because you've experienced other things in real life. You could say, oh, it's probably a sweet treat of some kind. You know, maybe it's a baked product. Now, you might be able to intuit some of these things based off of prior knowledge, but if you have no other subset of knowledge to work from, then I give you the visual details of a cake. You probably still aren't even going to be able to actually visualize it, much less fully understand what it is. But more importantly, if I describe to you how to make a cake, will you understand what a cake is? Will you understand when you should make a cake? Will you understand why you should make a cake? You will only have the how. And they're talking about how in modern teaching, the how is so separated from the why and the when that people learn the how pretty well, but never have the why and when, and thus never do anything with the how.
The only time my father got mad at me academically was in early high school, and I was like debating, like fudging some results, exhausted at like 2 in the morning, and nothing was working in the science lab. And he was like, he was mad at me with the full fury of his oath as a physician. It was like, you don't do that.
Right.
You don't do that. That's not allowed as something that you can do.
Right. And that I can't help but see that as a religious vow.
It is.
It's like, I will not falsify the data, and that's the data. If it's real data, there's a pattern in that. And what the data represents is the transcendent object, and that's a technical part of science because you're trying to falsify your hypothesis and not to support it.
And the key for the liberal arts education is, of course, that every field that you enter into has a different ethic that is beholden to something that's greater. And if we elevate the individual to the level that they travel everywhere that they go, you're no longer engaging in science as a scientist who's subservient to scientific values and ethic. There's all these different value sets that are your moorings. How do you read a text? How do you approach mathematics? What's acceptable scientific process, right? Can it be reproduced in a lab?
Okay, hold on, boys. I actually don't have anything to interrupt with here. No good anecdotes or interpretations to offer, but I have to take a step away for a little quick second. Just a little quick second. Like probably literally less than a minute. But yeah, I gotta BRB, guys. Hold on. First of all, I didn't know that timer was set like that. It's kind of accurate because I did come back probably like right about the time that hit 0. But I forgot there's actually one more thing I do. This time though, the timer should set to the same 30-second interval, and I bet I beat the timer this time. So one final BRB. Yeah, I was definitely a little off, but Jesus, I'll get these timers right eventually. Eventually, I'll be like a pro at like estimating exactly how long it's gonna take me to do a thing or another thing or whatever. But for now, we'll have to let it count as close, even though it never counts as close unless it's horseshoes or hand grenades. But I digress. Let's get back into this shit, boy.
All these different forms in which you have to, and that's why you're talking about it as an apprenticeship. And it's like, of course it is. You're not learning the facts of it. You're learning to subjugate yourself to a higher set of ethics. And once you carry you into all of that, and you're more important of all the ethics, you have this crumbling because you're not chiseled around all the way of how you approach different things.
But you're also enjoined upon to sacrifice your allegiance to the previous order. That's right, because what you're trying to do in science is to just figure out why what you already know is wrong. That's the scientific enterprise, not to prove that it's right, but really to figure out if it's wrong. Then you might think too on the faith element, because that's really still what we're discussing, right? Is that it's faith and this fragile faith that's not attendant upon proof. It's like, well, what takes you out of a tyranny? Well, if a tyranny is everything you know in the most rigid form, the only thing that can take you out of tyranny is the willingness to live beyond that. And then if you're in the desert, you end up after the tyranny, then your faith brought you there. You think, what leads you out of the desert? It might be the desire to return to the tyranny, but if it's proper orientation towards the promised land, that's got to be faith too. It's like, despite we're in the tyranny, despite we're in the desert, we believe that we're willing to put our lives on line for the notion that something better still beckons.
But the truth is, anything you build, whether it's a company, function on that model. You have to project a vision. And then you have to fill it with body as you're moving towards that vision. And the founding of the United States is the same. This story has a beautiful and perfect parallel in the story of the Aeneid, where you have, at the end of the Trojan War, you have Aeneas that is taken out of a catastrophe, carrying his father on his back, like Moses brought his father's bones out of Egypt. And he goes into absolute chaos, out onto the waters, meeting with the foreign queen, and it's only this vision that he has, this vision that is pulling him forward, that he will found something which one day will become Rome. And he has no idea, right, what
It's an
that is.
amazing moment. It's right at the end of the first half of the Aeneid, isn't it? At the end of book 6. And
All right, again, another moment where I'm going to stop this real quick for a interjection point. I just realized that I had certain key buttons set. They were making my Facebook buttons do certain things. And that was rather freaking dumb of me. Should have been hitting the hell of that key because I use it for freaking WoW all the time. That was a bit wild.
Aeneas is led down into the underworld. It goes right down into the underworld, and then is shown around by his father all of the greatness of Rome that is to come.
So he comes out of the of death. Into this vision of Rome, and it's almost completely parallel to this story. And so the Western culture is based on those two stories.
And like
the Western culture is based on this story and the story of Aeneas. And if you look at any mythical, legendary version of England or of any country, they will always try to connect themselves. Like, how do we connect ourselves to the story in the Bible, to Noah, to Moses? Somehow, or at least to Noah, and then how do we connect ourselves to Aeneas?
Yeah, and like the Israelites, Aeneas is always complaining. He's always saying, "No, I can't do this. Please help." And so they just he keeps needing.
But could I descend from the sublime and grand to something very, very simple? The element here that I've always loved is explaining it, and that is Moses raises his rod, the waters go back, and the people all go. And one man steps out, and you celebrate him. I never heard his name till a Jewish friend told me, Nashon. And when everyone else hesitated fearfully, he stepped forward in faith, and everyone happily followed him. And they celebrated
The invitation of God is proffered, but one man has to step forward and take it before everyone else will follow. And so
It's a legend, but it's not in the Torah itself. But it's a very important legend. Yes, that's right, exactly. By the way, I know. I'm going to make sure you talk. I feel bad. He has great stuff to say.
Can we see who he cuts, like who he's cutting off, like who he's referencing? Because I don't think the screen cuts. Is it just Jordan Peterson?
And so
It's a legend, but it's not in the Torah itself. But it's a very important legend. Yes, that's right, exactly. By the way, I know. I'm going to make sure you talk. I feel bad. He has great stuff to say. I just want you to know of a
That's just JP.
Talmudic statement. God, the angels are joining the Jews in singing this song of praise and celebration. And rebuke them, this is in the Talmud, my creatures are drowning and you sing songs. I completely differ with this Talmudic thing. I have no problem singing songs when people who want to murder you die.
But it's not about you. It's not even about people in general. It's about the highest. Angels represent the highest order of good. Good in its highest form in action, that is what angels are. And good at its highest form cannot celebrate death. Cannot celebrate death, like, at all, for any reason. Not even if it's the end of tyranny, not if it's the violence of man, like, you do not celebrate death if you are aiming at the highest possible good. Like, that is not congruent. Now, you don't have to be freaking Jesus. Like, it's understandable to be, well, human. And if celebrating the death of a vile criminal brings you closer to good rather than further away from it, depending on where you currently are at on that alignment spectrum, then good for you. Then do that. But it's not to illustrate whether or not that in and of itself is wrong for any given individual. It's to indicate that is not in keeping with the highest of good. I feel like that point's being lost here somehow.
But it is just worthy of note that the Jewish tradition, post-Torah, had an issue with at least the angel singing along with Jesus. Just thought you'd find that fascinating.
Well, just a few thoughts on this. 5 minutes for a conversation. As fundamental as faith is here, I think we want to be careful about the suggestion that somehow our faith is simply making a world. I know there's no one's actually suggesting that.
right.
Simply speaking, you said the invitation is what underlies it. It's not merely an existential act, and we're talking about these questions of deep questions of physics. I think it needs to be pointed out just very simply, and listeners can go and read up on it. But
Wanted to punish him for
great
resisting so
scientists
much.
Like Freeman Dyson and Sir Roger Penrose, whom you mentioned, simply do not believe that the empirical evidence suggests that things are deterministic. But the thing is, we don't have to depend on empiricism on empirical analysis to know the truth of our agency or to grasp the fact of its being grounded in transcendental reality. Grasp rationally. We don't need science to know those things, and not science and empirical science. We need rationality. But what I want to suggest is that in this image here, which is surely one of the greatest images of all literature,
truly is
bigger or more influential or more perennial than this, few chapters or a couple of chapters. There's this wonderful sense in which, in verse 18, the Lord shall reign forever and ever. Now let's remember this is a refrain in the song that is a reminder of the transcendent sovereignty, of the goodness of God, the goodness of reality itself. And that's the principle.
that guy resisted so much he was still able to kill me. Ladies and gentlemen, I just died level 26 to these piece of shit human mobs, bro. I cannot believe this crap. I am thoroughly... turn around hard. I am thoroughly humiliated by this endeavor. No, endeavor. I'm not humiliated by this outcome. Occurrence. Anyway.
That throws the horse and his rider into the sea, and there's a beautiful sense there. I think just at a spiritual level, when you think about the difficulties of life, your own sins, the burden of your existence, of the wrongs you've committed, there is a profound sense in that this is an image of forgiveness, of the goodness of God, over washing away our own weakness and wrongdoings, and to remake the people, but also our own selves in light of that. And I just want to quickly make a note for listeners here.
So if you dispense with your own tyranny, you can cross the Red Sea.
If God, yes, if God, if it's not we who dispense simply with it, but it's God's work, or let's say it's the goodness of the order of reality itself, to which we cast ourselves upon, that can affect that moment of forgiveness. And I just want to quickly note, because when you're talking about a text as iconic and as fundamental to our whole history of culture, as Exodus is, and of this chapter in particular, in this amazing image of crossing the Red Sea, it is of course also given rise to all kinds of other works of art. And there's just one I want to point out for people, and that is, many people have heard of the Messiah, of course, the work of Handel. But Handel wrote another biblical oratorio called Israel in Egypt, that dramatizes in musical form the story of Exodus, but which has as it were its climax in the crossing of the Red Sea. And and Miriam's song, "Sing ye to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider has he thrown into the sea," which is positioned in Handel as as it were the climax of the whole story, but of which the refrain that comes in these gorgeous gathering, thunderous chords, "The Lord shall reign forever and ever." And I just want to note that if anyone's interested, you can find many recordings, but my favorite, which I listen to full blast every Easter Sunday morning, is the Monteverdi Choir under the direction of John Elliott Gardner. It is a sublime work. This sublime work of music. Turn it up, man, and listen to it on repeat.
Okay, so Jonathan, this
Let us find this song that he so vehemently recommends. I'm gonna be honest with you, boys. As much as I find a lot of substance in this conversation, I don't find a lot of hope that the song will actually be good. You know, I'm more of a modern day man when it comes to my music. We'll see.
Every Easter Sunday morning is the Monteverdi Choir under the direction of John Elliott Gardner. It is a sublime work.
Let's see if we can figure this one out. So the Monteverdi Choir. Is it under the direction of who?
Elliott Gardner.
Elliott. See if we got something here.
I don't know about you, but before
No.
Ever and ever. And I just want to note that if anyone's interested, you can find many recordings, but my favorite, which I listen to full blast every Easter Sunday morning, is the Monteverdi Choir. You know, thunderous chords. The Lord shall reign forever and ever. And I just want to.
All right, let's use that as a prompt too. The Lord shall reign forever. Did we get it? All right. Now, will this come through my audio? Yeah. Okay, so it is coming through the audio. Let's check it out.
The sister of Aaron took a timbrel in her
I've really tried to give my best. There were some parts that I found interesting about that, but I cannot keep doing this. I'm sorry. Anybody that was actually enjoying that, yeah, good on you, mate. Ain't gonna be me. What the actual nutty the fuck was I about to do? Let's just replay this. Let's go do something else. Let's just play this.
You can find many recordings, but my favorite, which I listen to full blast every Easter Sunday morning, is the Monteverdi Choir under the direction of John Elliott Gardner. Sublime work. This sublime work of music. Turn it up and listen to it on repeat.
This pillar issue, it just linked things for me together like Matt. So because here's something that's really worth considering given what we've been discussing. So imagine you cast a vision onto the unknown to pull yourself forward in faith. Okay? So then the question, where does the vision come from if it's a proper vision? And I would say the answer to that neurologically and psychologically is it really does do that, because the order is what you already know and what's yet to be learned, right? And there's a meaningful conjunction of those two. And I say meaningful because when those two are conjoined, that's when you get the experience of meaning, like you do when you listen to music, because it's partly predictable and partly unpredictable. And in a conversation that's compelling, it refers to what you know because you can't understand it, but it refers to what you don't know because it would be interesting. And when there's then this spirit of meaning that's pulling you forward, and where the spirit of meaning itself in its initial phases from the Jungian perspective is a vision of the potential future. And so the visionary experience itself is called forth by the pillars.
Yeah, and so I think the best way to understand it, it's dangerous because some of the terms, they can become a bit slippery. So you can have this notion of chaos as potential in which you're moving from your point of origin. Mm-hmm. And then the pillars would be something more like concentric and eccentric forces. Things that are pulling towards...
I'm on my asthma goal shit right now. We are 30 minutes into this bitch, but an hour and a half in the goddamn stream. What the hell? What the hell? What the hell? I mean, we burned like 15 minutes probably before we started this, but still, bro. It's crazy. Sorry, I couldn't leave that thought to myself. I had to interrupt with it.
Moving
we
from
back a
your
little
point
bit.
of origin, mm-hmm. and then the pillars would be something more like concentric and eccentric forces. Things that are pulling towards order or towards centrality or towards identity, and things that are moving outside of them. So that which goes towards the strange and that which moves towards my own, right? And so those are usually the way that if you at some point when you say...
Well, you couldn't keep yourself oriented without that, could you? Because if you weren't being referred back to what you know, you'd be completely disoriented. Yeah. And if you were only cast into what you don't know, you'd be
so that would be
disoriented.
So mercy and judgment would be a version of that. So mercy is that I extend openness in order to bring things to push things away from me. And so it's like I harden to push things away, and then they fragment. I open to bring things towards me, and they let's say, so those two forces,
have
like
to
those
be
two
balanced.
pillars. Yeah.
Yeah, right. You have to find your proper.
That is very eloquently put. Judgment pushes away. Acceptance and openness invite in.
And this is something which is as much in Christian thinking, and I've seen many rabbis talk about this idea of the right hand and the left hand of God, you know, that this idea of bringing forward with the right hand, pushing away with the left hand, balancing that out in order to let's say, rear a child, for example. You have to have those two balanced sides.
Okay.
I got one question for all of you. I'm very curious if it'll strike you or not. Verse 20 in this chapter.
15, 20.
And Miriam the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, with the timbrel in her hand. See any problem?
She's not the sister of Moses.
Exactly. Isn't that odd? I don't have an answer. I'm asking an open question. She's the sister of both Moses and Aaron.
But
why
why-
does it say sister of
Well,
Aaron?
Aaron's the spokesperson, so is she being cast as the sister of Aaron because she's also the word here? She's
I don't know.
symbolically.
The chain is Moses to Aaron to her. That's
Is there
the hierarchical connection.
is there significance in her being a prophetess?
Well,
Well,
no,
that-
because he well, that's interesting because Aaron was described as prophet, but so was Moses.
But
So-
also, Miriam is a prophet that can use words, though, and song. So maybe she's more assimilated. She's assimilated in that text to Aaron more than to Moses.
Now, women couldn't be priests.
Right,
Could
but
they?
but they
can
could be
be
a
prophets.
No, it is another example of Torah egalitarianism of the sexes, which I could drive you crazy showing you how many examples. But anyway, I did not have an answer to my question. I just find it interesting.
Intriguing.
I have a question.
Yeah. No,
So,
fine.
Jonathan, this is back to the narrative question. So you said that you project faith and then you fill it with body, then you embody it. Is that right? So I was thinking about the structure that this amount of complexity in a text, like the way we're taking this apart and there's so much meaning, is also part of why it's repeated again and again and again in the way I was saying is inherently in certain regards undramatic, right? Because it's speaking to the procedural and to the ritual. And so it's so interesting is we get through this big climactic action sequence, and then there's a poem or a song that's about what we just saw, that describes what we just saw again. So it's like, this is in some ways, if you're giving screenplay notes on the Bible, this is like it's like, we're going to tell you what happens, we're going to show you what happens, and then we're going to say what just happened, right? It's the worst way to dramatize something. And what's interesting is that's because the aim is not merely to dramatize, right? The aim is to create ritual.
Because would this song have been? Is this song sang ritually in the synagogues?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's part. So the
It's got
text
its own
has a liturgical
cantillation, yes.
aspect to it.
And it's said in the daily prayer.
Okay.
I know it by heart in
All right.
Hebrew because it's in the daily prayer.
What do you suppose? What do you suppose? All of you. What do you suppose that you like? I've been struck by this friend of mine. Education far deeper than mine. So striking about Rex. I can't get him to do it often enough. He can spout all great swaths of poetry. And I was always cynical about that as a kid. Why memorize anything? I thought, because you could just read it, and I didn't really know anybody who could do it. But then I met a few people who could, and it's phenomenally impressive. And he said that it deeply structures the way he thinks, having that encoded into it, you know. And so I'm wondering, if you participate in these practices and you know these songs, it means you can sing the song. It means it can come out of you. It's in you in some real sense. It's not external anymore. And I wonder what that does to us perceptually, and because that one of the things that shapes the way we perceive the world, literally perceive it, is by practicing habits, because we see the world through our habits in some sense. And so you want to develop proper habits, and this joyful singing is a kind of habit. I don't exactly understand what it is.
Saying before we started that if you write something down, you remember it better. You remember it better if you write it down than if you type it or tap it in your phone. There's different ways that we're encoded to receive information. And what's so interesting to me with this is that if you're trying to ritual, you sing, it's one version. So how do you build a mythology? So what is Star Wars? Is it a film? Yeah. Is it comic books? Yes. Is it spin-off TV series? Yes. There's all these different mechanisms for engagement because when something's a myth, it fragments out into all these different parts, right? And then it's sort of pellet shot through the culture to some extent. And you
Pellet shot. I'm thinking shotgun blast.
So and a little bit cynically, but nonetheless, it's like that's how a mythology is being moved to the land. In a lot of ways, it's like here's the story.
It's also a memory representation because one of the things you do if you want to remember something is, well, if you code it in poetry, that's an aid to memory because of the rhythm, because that's an aid to memory. And then the song, the melody is an aid to memory. And so if you tell the story and you act it out and you sing it, then it's much more likely that it's going to be remembered.
And there's rules for how you set a table and prepare a meal, right? There's all these ways that it's ingrained into the culture in all these different ways.
Well, and that's also uniting you, right? Because if you sing, that's one thing. But if you sing and everyone else sings with you, then you're all, well, you're doing that. And this is when they sing, if it's going on. Or you can at least, when you watch a bunch of other people sing together, is that you get this sense that we're all together in the right place doing the right thing. And people, I don't think there's anything that people like more than that.
It's probably not. That's probably the thing that people enjoy the most, yes.
Celebration and it's making of body, it's all happening together. This idea that we recognize each other. So standing in front of the flag, doing, like putting your hand over and reciting the Pledge of Allegiance or whatever you do, singing the national anthem, that's a perfect example of embodying the spirit of the nation as, singing it together, all facing together, thinking of the same thing. It's like we're manifesting the reality
of the unity.
Because unity cannot be taken for granted.
No,
without
not
common purpose, we will just fragment.
Well, without a common vision.
Yeah.
So freedom, common choice. Oz and I were discussing this. What was your phrase out of the covenant? That
Freely chosen consent.
freely chosen consent, right? Fundamental theme.
The succinct and poetic phrase itself right there.
Right. In a mind control cult, like when I went in to observe it, so call it undercover to some extent. You're in a giant conference hall, like in a ballroom at an airport, and everyone's in a giant horseshoe, and they say something like, "Everybody who's ready for change, stand up." And you're like, that's disingenuous.
Right.
But the pressure you feel when 500 people stand up and you're sitting is incredible. And so that's ignorance, which we discussed.
Performance when everybody gets on their feet to clap. Maybe not a standing ovation. It's like, who are you to deny this, the enthusiasm that grips
and it's
the
a
crowd?
statement also to say, no, I don't like cats. Like, I'm not going to I'm not doing a standing ovation to cats. It's a statement in the inverse, right? Not to pick on cats, but it's cats.
But there's also relative to your point about the dramatic
But
arc,
it's
Greg.
cats.
It's one thing for us to read the text and say, oh, well, they say they're going to happen, and then it happens, and then they talk about or sing about what had just happened.
The fact that he chose at that moment to go in on like one of the most iconic musicals is hilarious to me. I mean, I see his point validly. Like, it's not the deepest of fucking plays for sure, but bless, bro.
But from the standpoint of the Israelites, it's somewhat different, and here's why. Because it's possible to go through a day of your life and not even think about it, right? You can go through and even have a traumatic or a beautiful experience and not be aware of it, right? Because in turning back and it becoming conscious that you actually understand what it was. Of course, the work of memory is to continually apprehend our memories so we understand them more and more truly, right? That's why therapy can, in fact, free you from a traumatic experience. Not because the experience changes, but because your memory of it becomes more true, as it were, more accurate to what it is. One of the things that's going on here is making it that you can only understand by turning back and look at it.
Look, the literature on that's absolutely clear. What pulls something into your memory isn't merely the repetition of it. That's pretty good for recognition memory. But for recall, what you actually practice is recalling. And so if you want to remember a text, what you have to do is read it, and then you have to close the text, and then you have to recall it. And it's the process of the recollection that drives that into your memory.
I do not practice recollection. I do not practice recollection at all, basically. Like, I don't give a fuck about perfectly recalling something. maybe I should. They're kind of making some sound points of why maybe I should, but I fucking do not. I boil things down to the gist, to utilitarian use of it, and then fuck the rest of it. Like, I don't quote jack shit other than short little, really succinct quotes, the things that are already boiled down. Like, yeah, if it's already boiled down, then yeah, I'll remember a lot of those. But I boil it down. I don't take the full piece, you know. I don't know if that's a brain space thing. Maybe it's a laziness thing. I don't know. I'm very on the fence of thoughts about it, and I could go on for quite a while about my thoughts on it. But yeah, suffice to say, I don't do that.
Because it's easy to think that it's just mere exposure, repetitive exposure. It's like, well, that works to some limited degree, but really what you have to do to remember is to practice remembering.
And prayer is like, I mean, the end of the day, you say forgiveness for what you've missed. It's like that's exactly what it is. It's going back over the day, and then and thanking for what you've been given, and kind of bowing down for that which you've missed. And it's like it's a way to revisit. Let's say.
Practice remembering is a
Right.
great way to understand what prayer is. Would you say? That was your phrase, practiced remembering. That, in a way, is what prayer is.
I think that's an interesting take on this. This sort of sense of the historical formation behind us, behind the people of Israel, behind the story. But it's also, what's so striking is the second half of the song is, as it were, looking ahead. It's a kind of, it's in a prophetic mode. So if you've got effectively the whole narrative of the book of Exodus distilled down into the song, because they're looking ahead to
The mountain.
the inhabitants of Canaan being melting away. They're looking ahead to the mountain of thine inheritance. They're looking ahead to Sinai, and then of course right at the end there is
The memory has
the
to be
sanctuary.
the memory
Right.
has to be integrated into the vision of the
Right.
future.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the memory's not good for
That's
anything.
the vision. That's the sort
We
of
don't
the
get
horizon
to we
ahead.
don't get to anything. It's like a preview for a movie, right? You have to go and set the expectations of what we're going to receive. So we set the expectations. We're not arriving at a lot of new material before we've been vetted to know that we're going to receive it.
But it's spoiling the story again, I suppose.
That's right.
Hold up. We're gonna do a quick shift, boys. Just a quick one. Oh, do. Hello. We're going to cut away from the game for a moment. We want to cut away from the game for a moment. Because they're coming up on a part, I'm pretty sure, that I want to give full attention to. For like 10 minutes. But full attention to. I'll pipe up and note when we're actually at that point. But I think we should be really close if my recollection is accurate. Let us see.
The thing we encountered yesterday with the bones of Joseph being taken out of Egypt, that's also a recollection. And so you can imagine, and this makes sense clinically, because what happens when you get someone's memory in order is that they can bring the past into the future. They're not trapped in the past anymore. They can now integrate the past with the future. That's what a functional memory does. It's not merely an accurate representation of the past as if it's an objective videotape. First of all, you can't do that because the past is too complex. If the memory of the past isn't integrated into the proper future vision, then it's not an adequate memory of the past. And then it will torture you. That's the other thing. It's not just that that doesn't work. It's that the unintegrated part of the past, so still coded at an emotional level, will haunt you until you integrate it into
That's the
a vision
Faulkner,
of the
right?
future. That's
Faulkner. The past isn't dead. It's not even past.
right. That was Faulkner. Oh, I've been misattributing that to Nietzsche.
Maybe
to
I've
know
been
that.
misattributing it to Faulkner.
Yeah. We're probably both wrong. All right. So
Okay.
Do we have anything else to say on the imagery of the closing of the sea over the Egyptians? Or are we?
In the song? Or,
Either, in either place.
Well, just a small point, really. It's interesting that the way that the song, that there's a kind of dissonance between the song and the reported events in chapter 14. So there are things that happen in the song, there are things that are described in the song that are actually not described in the prose. For example, it talks about, earthquakes, the earth shaking and swallowing them up. It talks about fire descending and so on and so forth. So it's as if...
Talks about the dukes of Edom and the mighty men of
Well,
Moab.
that's the sort of proleptic, prophetic bit. And
But isn't that the two traditions that are coming in being integrated? I mean, if
Well, here is we're talking about Esau. So like Edom is Esau. So
I mean, these
I don't
elements
know.
that don't match. Isn't there a theory? And Dennis, this will be your bailiwick. Isn't there a theory that parts of these are taken from different traditions and they're combined, and so there's different pieces? And
Well,
By the way, bailiwick, a term I learned while watching this video the first time. It means your area of expertise, basically. No, really not necessarily expertise, I don't think, but area of interest. Like, and not just like vague nature, but like your actual, like, a big area of interest for you. That is your bailiwick. I don't remember the origin. I learned it for a second, but then I forgot it. It didn't strike me hard enough to stick, I guess. But yeah, bailiwick is like your area your area of extreme. I mean, not even extreme. Your area of strong interest. Yeah, put it that way. Funny phrase. Very old phrase. Does not get used very much. I guess these are a bunch of old people, so. I mean, to be blunt.
it's my bailiwick,
Wait, hold on.
but it's not what I generally. If you mean, for example, the documentary hypothesis, is that what you're referring to? Of taking Jehovah, Elohim, priestly, Deuteronomic.
This is a heavily redacted P.
I'm not a big fan of that.
I'm very grateful that we don't talk about that.
I mean, if there's different traditions, verbal traditions that were chosen from and integrated in the story, and so there's like vestigial
Or they
pieces
may
that
have
don't
been
match.
filling in details that the prose didn't. I mean,
that would be
I
the
like to
historical
take it
critical
at its
approach.
face value.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could take a historical critical approach, and there's been a lot of scholarship on this, I think, where you look at exactly the process of editing and all the different presence of the different sources. But I guess a sort of theological point would just be that the imagery is a kind of kaleidoscope of images that goes well beyond the kind of the watery and the marine, as it were. And that may be, I don't know what the theological point is, that it's a kind of cosmic, it's back to Jonathan's point, the kind of the cosmic chaos.
That also happens when we tell a
sovereignty
story.
over cosmic chaos.
Right? Because when a novelist, Greg can speak on this more, but when a novelist represents the world, you're going to base it to some degree on your experience because you have nothing else to talk about otherwise, but then you incorporate all sorts of other things into the story that make it, in some sense, more than what, it's two ways of looking at it. It's more than what merely happened. But there's another way of looking at it, whereas it's a truer and more universal account of what actually happened.
It's also the most inane, like chyron that comes up at the beginning of a movie where they say, based on real events.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
as opposed to what?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
what's another option? This is
Superb. That's
where-
great. Right. By the way, I'm just curious again, because I mentioned this earlier, and that's fine if it.
I apologize. I was chewing on some food because I'm a hungry boy. But I promise to warn you guys when we're coming up on the part. You stuck up on me. We just had it. This is the part that I really wanted to discuss. I'm going to replay it again real quick. And from the moment this man starts speaking when I hit play, give me the moment that we're talking about one of the most crucial things I've ever heard anybody say. And it comes off as really simple, but listen to this shit.
And that may be, I don't know what the theological
Hold on.
point
We're not there yet.
is.
Just slightly further.
The
Over
story.
cosmic chaos.
Right.
Okay, yeah. So, like, literally, like, if I just go a dozen frames back real fast. All right, yeah, this is the spot, boys. Listen to this shit. Listen to this shit for real, for real. Like, I cannot even, boys.
You tell a
Sovereignty over
story,
cosmic chaos.
right? Because when a novelist, Greg can speak on this more, but when a novelist represents the world, you're going to base it to some degree on your experience because you have nothing else to talk about otherwise, but then you incorporate all sorts of other things into the story that make it, in some sense, more than what, it's two ways of looking at it. It's more than what merely happened, but there's another way of looking at it, whereas it's a truer and more universal account of what actually happened.
It's also the most inane, like, chyron that comes up at the beginning of a movie where they say, based on real events.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
as opposed to what?
Right.
Like,
It's
what's another option? This is
superb.
like,
Okay, so those two things together. What Jordan Peterson just said, and then what this man whose name I forget because I'm terrible with names. I'm so sorry, guy. What these two just said together is insanely such a big deal, dude. Like, okay, so he's explaining how reality itself, not just from the human perspective, but reality itself. Okay, maybe that's too big a leap to start with. I think it extends to the whole point of what I was just about to say, but let's dial back a little bit. Humans only know subjective experience. That's all we have. So if I try to explain something to you in an objective way, then you're not going to have a full understanding of that, because now you have to try to fill in the gaps yourself of making that objective experience something subjective, because that's all you understand is subjective. That's all you've ever lived. You are a subjective creature. So I cannot convey to you in the most truthful manner a recollection of events if I give you the purely objective. Therefore, I have to give you some combination of a adjacent subjectivity in combination with a certain objectivity. Because by taking a subjectivity that's not too far removed from your own, and an objectivity that you can logically process, and then cross-examining the two, in a sense, is how you can develop a personalized subjective understanding of any given event. So both are required to properly recollect history. You need subjectivity to recollect history. If I just give you a list of historical facts, you're not really going to understand. But if I give you, freaking Anne Frank's diary, then, well, now you have some real understanding. I think that one probably paints a really good example of what the hell I'm trying to describe. But then this man steps in and says something that takes it slightly a step further that I think is a very accurate step further, which is that when a story says based on a true story, no fucking shit. They all are. There's not a story that's not based on a true story. It's just a matter of degree of separation. Like, how many fanciful elements are we doing? Like, how much abstraction are we using? How many metaphors are we using? And how much of it is just, rote fact? That's the only variation. It's all based on a true story because all we have reference to is true stories. A false story is, if it's a decent one, I don't want to say a good one, just a decent one. A false story is just a true story retold using aspects of other true stories to fudge the potential conclusion that a listener might make. That's it. It's still based on a true story. I don't know if that strikes you guys as a big a deal as it strikes me, but holy fuck, that's huge.
That's great. Right. By the way, I'm just curious again, because I mentioned this earlier, and that's fine if it, just stayed there and sort of died. Are you all comfortable morally, theologically, with celebrating the death of the bad guys?
Well, I think it has that bifurcated element that you described, because on the one hand, Stephen pointed to this, on the one hand, why wouldn't you celebrate the death and demise of your own tyranny? Right? If you're thinking about this as a psychological story in part, so it's a spiritual journey, it's partly a representation of internal transformation. It's like, yeah, well, thank God we got rid of the prideful and tyrannical, deceitful part of ourselves. And so you could celebrate that. But then when you look at it historically, you'd have to say, well, these are real people that are suffering.
Right.
And
So
and
I'm
there's a
I'm okay
catastrophe
with their singing the song. I'm just curious because I think a lot of people would have taken the Talmud's outlook. Hey, they're still God's creatures and they still died, and
So
you
would
may
you
be
say that's
relieved, but you shouldn't be celebrating. Do you? Is that your position? Any of you?
I think it's a question of levels, just like the Talmudic story, which is that there is a level at which I can celebrate, and there's also a level at which I can understand that there is there's another vision of this, where I do have to be careful not to think that there's an absolute duality in the world, and that these are people
And that I'm
completely
only-
evil, and they're the sons of the devil, and so it's like I
I'm
can actually
only
show both.
Israel.
Let me give a totally real experience everyone here has had and everybody watching has had. When you watch World War II films and Nazi soldiers are killed, is it okay to be happy that they are killed? It's a very real question because I know
think if
that it's somebody's son,
Dennis,
somebody's husband.
I think if the film is deep enough, you're not only happy. Because what happens is that the filmmakers have characterized the Nazis just as demoniac and soulless entities, but as people with whom you can make contact despite their corruption. And then when the death occurs, there's a sorrow that goes along with it that's real. I think if it's only celebratory, it's not a deep enough examination.
There's a story about John Lewis, then it might be apocryphal and I might be misquoting it, which let me just undermine the story 100 ways. But I believe that this is right, that when he was on the bridge in Edmund Pettus, part of what their training was for nonviolence was to envision the cops beating them as boys, as sons. And that was what held them in restraint. And that's what tacks to a transcendental value that can be transformational. So I offer that to Dennis Prager, Angel of Vengeance over here.
But Dennis, you're bringing in the problem of the casualties, the German soldiers. You could equally bring in the psychology of the victors. So you take the difference between a triumph, positive, triumphalism, negative.
Right.
And
That's
I've
triumph
read
taken too
Jewish
far.
commentary saying
So Oz, do you have an issue with the celebratory song here?
not at all.
Okay.
There's one
Not
thing
at
in
all.
common here.
But you
Because
don't want
this
the
is not
triumph to
triumphalism?
become.
Is that why?
No, that's just.
So, I really think this man here, paused on him, brings such a valid perspective to it. So I was talking earlier about this, it was a macro situation, it's the highest order of good versus the expected movement towards good within a human being. And he kind of lines that out in a certain way here. He's like, if you let it become an all-consuming, triumphant fucking dirge or some such, it's where you always just celebrate the death of your enemies with no worry for any other repercussions other than how they might affect you. then you've crossed into the realm of evil. But if you celebrate the death of your tyrant, in particular, briefly, then you're not so far off the mark, which is relatively accurate, in my opinion.
Celebration of the triumph, if it continues and becomes a triumphalist attitude to everybody, that's extremely dangerous.
Yeah, what he just said. What I just said.
There's a technique
What he just said that I
is at
just said
work
that he
here,
said.
too, which is, again, I'm gonna pop to contemporary thrillers just as a means of something that we're familiar with to tack back to it. But when the primary Bond villain dies, he dies in the most excruciating fashion possible and last. That's one of the rules, right? Like, you can dispose of henchmen in ways that are like amusing and interesting, but like, you reserve the most brutal death, and it's because they've earned it. I think in some ways, like, you're asking about the Nazis, and the Nazis are always the go-to because it's so purely routinizely
That's why
evil.
I use them. That's
and
right.
it's a good example. But also here, the Pharaoh strengthened his heart so many times that, like, it's incredibly likely at this point that you would be okay singing a song maybe if they drowned. You know, he finally lets them go, and then even then comes after them the next day. It's so much time that by the time he's arrived at his demise, he's the primary Bond villain.
Right. So,
And there's amount of satisfaction.
So there's a reason to be less.
Though
there has to be a
ironically,
reason to be
it
less
sets us up for
empathetic.
satisfaction.
this Bond villain didn't die. The henchman died.
All right, so let's go to let's cruise along here. So this is 1522. So we're done with the song and we're done with the Red Sea. So Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea, and they went out into the wilderness of Shur, and they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. So now we're starting to encounter the problem of the desert instead of the problem of the tyranny. And when they came to Marah, they could not drink of the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore, the name of it was called Marah, which I presume indicates bitter. And the people murmured against Moses. As you said, this didn't take very long, saying, but they're thirsty, so like, give them a break.
Yeah, be how
What
it
shall
is.
we drink? And Moses cried unto the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree, which, when he had cast into the waters were made sweet. I don't understand that.
No?
No. So why does that happen? Why do the water? Do you know that? Do you know why the waters become sweet?
Yes.
Why?
Oh, because there's potential which is not available to you in any world, any identity you can imagine, right? So you can eat certain things, but you can't eat rocks. Cows can eat grass, but they can't eat sugar or whatever. So it's like all.
Cows can probably eat sugar. He just doesn't know cows that well. But he's making a very valid point. I think this guy's probably about to spit us with some real hard facts. Well, I shouldn't know that because I'm pretty sure we're still not at the point that I stopped it yet. Yeah. This is probably a borderline remembrance is telling me he's about to spit some hard facts. Rather than any, hint-based intuition, as it were. Regardless, let's hear what this man's got to say. But before we do, let's go back to the grind, boys. Let's listen while we let the grind ride.
Beings have potential which is attributed to them, and that potential which is attributed to them can be understood as something like sweet water which can be introduced. There's also a type of water which is bitter. It's salt water. It's the water that is not available to you to drink. So it's potential that you don't have access to. So the idea of putting a tree, so a structure, a tree is a structure. It's a fractal structure. That's what a tree is. The idea of putting a tree into a structure in order to reveal the sweet waters. So you need a tree. What is available to you? What waters are sweet and what waters are bitter?
Okay, and Moses is also cast here as the person who's capable of doing that.
Yeah, definitely.
And to make what's bitter sweet.
That's right.
Oh, and that's an echo of him being able to take his hand diseased and to make it whole again, I would presume, again.
It's related. It's definitely related to that. With the snake and the rod is in many ways related to this as well. But you have to think of them together. It's like
But surely, no, I agree with all that. But surely the simple point is it's now drinkable.
That is the simple point. It's by
he
far not
takes-
the only
he's-
point.
Well, that shows him as a master of water again. Okay.
So the same water, right? I mean, that's made. It's like the water into wine. You know,
The real-
in Jesus.
Sorry. The real question was why the tree makes the water sweet. Not why the water was sweet, but why the tree. And the answer is a representation of structure, of divine structure, not some man-made simile of, barely held together structure, but the divine structure of its adherence to the Fibonacci sequence and its extreme longevity that could potentially last for thousands of years. Is divine structure, which makes the water palpable.
First miracle, but it's the same water that was bitter that becomes sweet. I think this is a very important thing that we're going to see again and again in the next chapters.
But you also have stories in Scripture where sweet waters become bitter. So the best stories in the Scripture is Ruth, where I forget her name before she named herself Mara, but she loses all her sons, and therefore her fruitfulness is gone. She doesn't have any sons, and so she said, "From now on, call me Mara. I am the bitter waters. I am potential for no one. I don't have a husband. I don't have sons. I have become this bitter water." So I'm saying that's what references I'm pulling in order to tell these stories. But I'll do it a few times so you can trust me when I say this. I'm not just pulling this out of my hat.
But I think what's so fundamental here is that it's like the same event in our lives can be a cause either for resentment or for redemption. And it's not, you can be diagnosed with cancer and you can pray to God and God not take the cancer away, right? But that bitterness of casting oneself upon God's providence, upon the goodness of the reality, you might say, praying to understand it. It is amazing. I've seen this in my own
That's the spirit
life.
of
How
Moses.
that spirit of humility, saying, "What is this for?" Is that bitterness of the water can become sweet. Not that the pain or the difficulty is taken away, but that rather than resentment, it can become in a difficult way of, let's say.
Well, and Moses is properly called the pillars of fire and the pillar of cloud. And so that's another example of exactly if you're oriented in such a manner, in the highest sense that even what's bitter in the desert can become sweet. Yeah.
It's not easy, but that's
definitely
what is revealed here, I think.
Right. Okay.
I just want to read you, maybe before we go further, I just want to read you something from Proverbs, just to kind of hammer my point, and the relationship between this idea of the feminine and the relationship between the feminine and the potential. So in Proverbs 5, it talks about the strange woman. Right? And it says, "For the knees of the strange woman drop as a honeycomb. Her mouth is smoother than oil, her end is bitter as wormwood. Two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps hold on hell." So this image of this water, this bitter waters, which is also the bottom of the world, right? This deep, the place where no life is possible. The bottom of the sea, right? The bottom of the salt sea. And so the imagery is brought back here to kind of connect all these images together to understand the difference between the potential that is available to you and the potential which is dangerous and deadly and related to death.
I don't want to get contrarian voice, but I think we have to start with the straightforward and the historical. In other words, God is bringing to birth a nation. And again, Dennis, you come in, as the Jews, as I read it, before we get to the covenant, well, we've had the liberation, Exodus, the deliverance, that's number one. We're getting to the covenant, the law, and eventually to the worship of the tabernacle. But we've got this little bit in between. And there are three incidents. One, they need necessities of food, drink, and food.
Food, drink, and food.
Two, they need some administration. You have Moses' father-in-law coming in to tell him how to delegate and so on. And then three, they have to learn to fight an enemy. And so you have these three very basic things put in place. The necessities, as it were, and then
Fighting the enemy is just just adds a self-accountability aspect to security. They need food, water, and security. And part of security is also shelter. So permanent shelters only comes after. I guess that's another thing, that the fighting and enemy things. So it's security that doesn't involve the shelter, because the shelter only comes after the fighting the enemy part. So it's probably worth annotating the difference there. It's interesting that the way that's conveyed.
They're given the covenant and the law. And I think you have to start with a very simple,
So
straightforward.
you see that as part of the assembling of the new order and the most basic level.
Yeah, you can take the stuff there, the history and the basics of it, and then you see the rich.
Okay, so let's go to
They're not exclusive, I think.
No,
They're two.
at all.
Yeah.
No. And he cried unto the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree, which, when he had cast into the waters remained sweet. There he made for them a statute and an ordinance, and there he proved them. He said, if the Lord thy God, do that which is right in his sight, give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of these diseases upon thee, which I have brought upon the Egyptians, for I am the Lord that healeth thee. Okay, well, that's an unknown question too, and everyone asks themselves when they get sick too, is like, have I done something wrong that's increased the probability that I have become ill? And it's a terrible thing to ask yourself, because you add the moral burden to the catastrophe, and you don't want to leap right to that conclusion. But it's also an open question, is how...
No. You absolutely want to leave that conclusion. You fucked up somehow. You fucked up somehow. Like I am a vehement believer of that. Now, does that mean you cast harsh judgment? Not necessarily. Because, I mean, the person who fails to protect his family from an entire, nation ran by a corrupt government that is now seeked to, silence this man and his family for the simple crime of, speaking peace to the people. This has happened in history, obviously. That person is not to be judged harshly for their failure, but it is still a failure that they did not protect their family from that atrocity. And it's possible. It's humanly possible. It's extremely difficult. But he could have foreseen things well enough, had an exit strategy, left the country, it could have been dealt with in a way that his family didn't have to, die painfully. So, I mean, this is the kind of distinction we're drawing. If you're sick, that does not mean you deserve harsh judgment. But it does mean that you did something wrong at some point. I vehemently stand behind that. Because I vehemently stand behind that you get what you deserve in this life. And not in the sense of like everybody, if they're the kindest person in the world, you're always going to have a great life. But I mean, in the complexity of like your intelligence, your strength, your kindness, your truthfulness, your wisdom, your resistance of temptation, like all of these things culminate together into becoming what you deserve. And these things aren't truly externally imposed either. They're imposed internally by your own judgment of yourself. I mean, that becomes a long, separate conversation. The point being, you draw a distinction here between those that, got what they deserved from being sick or didn't get what they deserved from being sick. No, we all got what we deserved. The only distinction to need to be made is how harsh the judgment needs to be. How harsh the judgment, that's all.
healthy would you be if you were oriented constantly to the highest possible good? So...
Well, it's a terrible danger, though, in that, too. It's a very tough issue.
Yes, it's terrible.
Because
it's the
it
issue
is
of Job.
tempting people, true, exactly, and it's tempting people to then look at people and say, oh, that's a sinner.
Yeah.
And that's very cruel and unjust and ungodly and everything you say. Just I just want to just say, because I've dealt with this a lot, God promises that if you keep the commandments, I will not bring any of the diseases I brought upon the Egyptians. All of this worldly because otherwise God would be proven wrong in a day. He proved God promised X, and look, Joe here has some terrible skin disease. So it's collectively, I do buy it.
Do you think, Dennis, that maybe it's modulated by the fact that God's referring here to the diseases? I presume it's the plague diseases.
Oh, that's good. Well, in this case,
right.
that's a perfect
And
out.
so they're associated with tyranny per se, the diseases that tyranny bring.
That's good.
Okay,
that's really
because
good.
it's very specific,
that's
right?
True.
He says,
in this case, it is. Yes,
you're at least
that's
not
right.
going to be made sick by your own tyranny. And they came to Elim, where there were 12 waters and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there by the water. So now they're back to a place of rich water.
So this is back to Oz's point.
But also trees. So you put a tree in the bitter water, you get sweet water, then you get trees and water. So you get 12 wells for the 12 tribes and trees. So it's like a
The multiplication.
right. Yeah, that's what it is.
Moses. That's what Oz was talking about. The constituting of the nation, 12 tribes.
Yeah, and the dissemination of authority, and the proper distribution of authority in this tree-like structure too. Okay, so 16:1, and they took their journey from Elim, and all the congregation of the children.
That's another thing he brings up. It actually might be important to note that it is a tree-like structure. Not just that the tree is a divine structure, but that it is a tree, very specifically. That probably is the case. You know, a branching hierarchical structure is what was brought to mind by the idea of the tree in terms of its structure. So that probably plays a serious role.
Israel came unto the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after their departing out of the land of Egypt. And the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. The prophet and the politician are now our apostles. And the children of Israel said, would to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, and flesh pots, and we did eat bread to the full. For ye have brought us forth into this wilderness, to kill this whole assembly with hunger. So now they have nostalgia for the tyranny already. And the flesh pots, when we sat by the flesh pots, do you know what anyone know what that specifically
That's just where they get food.
is a reference to?
Meat.
To the meat or fish that they ate.
Okay, so it's a food reference.
Yes,
You know,
food.
this repetition reminds me a little bit. You were saying it's 3 minutes before they're complaining again.
Mm-hmm.
It's interestingly, it's the other side of the Pharaoh whose heart is constantly hardened, right? And it's like, it's the same thing. It's just this mirror image of it. Because at some point you're like, guys, come on, like give us 2 more verses before you complain, right? It just happened. It was working out.
Can y'all chill, bro?
Isn't hard enough. Their will isn't congealed enough in this scenario.
I think it shows
Maybe
the
that would be-
impossibility of prolonged faith, right? And it's like, it's at least they're trying to find and access a faith that has to do with something that's greater than them instead of a heart.
Well, they also have slavish habits at this point, you know, and we were trying to get one of the things we did say was that his will was in fact strong, and the opposite of that, it's not. Your will can be too strong; it can obviously be too weak too. And it's certainly the case that the Israelites' will in this situation continually is too weak. I mean, they're not only whining about the fact that they're in the desert, even though it's not been that long since they had the trees and the water, but they're literally you can't say that bitterness and resentment.
10 plagues, 10 commandments, and you have 10 complainings. You count them all.
Oh,
And
really?
This is the example, as the rabbi said. It takes the Lord 1 day to get them out of Egypt, and 40 years and counting to get Egypt out of them.
Right.
This is another
Accurate as
example.
fuck,
So
son.
it's sequences of 10, eh?
It's shaking out the internal tyranny now that the literal tyranny, they're free of the
Right.
literal tyranny, so they're shuttering it out of them.
That's really helpful. So the psychology of disobedience really is just running all the way through the entire book, and we're probably shifting from
And faithlessness.
yeah, that's right. And we might think of
Yeah, that's
we
right.
might see in Pharaoh ourselves and our own stubbornness and obstinacy and sort of persistent disobedience. And I guess now Pharaoh's disobedience, and now we're invited really to think of ourselves as the people of Israel and their,
Yeah,
their
well, and I
obstinacy.
think, we're starting to be invited to see our weaknesses in the desert. It's like we're no longer in a place of order now, even though there might be dawning order. We're in a place of chaos and doubt. And so, what is one of the biggest sins that tempt in the desert of doubt? It has to be this faithlessness and the desire for the return to
Is not the complete absence of creation, a wasteland, an apocalyptic wasteland.
well, and psychologically, it's clearly the case that when a uniting structure deteriorates, people say freedom, freedom. It's like, no, that is not what happens. What happens is chaos, anxiety, terror, bitterness, disappointment, frustration, especially if it's imposed upon them.
And that's why I think it's very important that just at the end of that chapter, there's this strange mention of ordinances. You'll keep the commandments, before they've actually been given. There's this sense that freedom can't just be complete anarchy. This is a point that's come back again and again in the previous seminars, hasn't it?
Well, it's completely stressed, continually stressed in the text that it's not
freedom needs
it's not
structure, it
freedom
needs
from
order.
structure.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
That's the, maybe
absolutely
that's
not. That's the desert. Is the absolute desert is freedom from structure. Right.
And maybe that's the preparation. Maybe that's why we're
That's why they
hearing
cross
the
to it.
story and the rituals and the laws before it happens. Because you're
You have to cross through the complete absence of structure as you seek to build a new one. Yeah. I'm gonna say this like this is a new revelation to me. It was kind of obvious and inherent, but like, I don't know. Something to me makes me feel like I should stress that more. I'm not exactly sure why, though, to be honest. We'll figure it out eventually. Hopefully. Eventually.
you have to have some preparation. If you're free of the literal external tyranny, but you're going out in the desert alone with your internal tyranny, what they're doing in some ways is saying, hey, training wheels, right? Pretty soon there's going to be a Red Sea. You got to build a meal that looks like it's like giving some of the structures to try and for 40 years to get Egypt out.
Well,
of them.
you do see. I think you do see that with the beginning of the construction of the orient people. These new
What's
structures.
coming is going to be ordered freedom. Reinhold is very strong on this. The bookends of history. Authoritarianism, all order, no freedom. That's Pharaoh. Or anarchy, all freedom, no order. And what you're going to have is an ordered freedom within the covenant.
Right. Well, and that's
And
that order.
That's the American dream, baby.
Genius of the American experiment. An order.
Yeah.
That's gone.
It's also the case that
Genius. Sorry. Just one note on that. Genius. That's a genie. The genie is contained in a container, but has an infinite capacity, and so.
it's also the case that the wilderness is going to prove to be a place of revelation. And
By the way, you said genius, genie, contained order. For all my Full Metal Alchemist fans, anybody that likes Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, that's the dwarf in the flask, baby. That's what that's all about. And it's contained potentiality. That's why he was a dwarf. He wasn't grown. And then he goes out and he fulfills this grand potential, becomes this mighty being. But he never was any more than the little him, the little speck that he always was at the same time. And that is very human. Despite whatever power you may accrue, whatever potential you may fulfill, you are forever and always, but a man. Fuck, Brotherhood is so good, man. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, with a fucking win, boys.
You know, I think it's very interesting, you know, how resistant we are to quiet, right? Because the wilderness is outside of the city and the hustle and bustle and noise and so on. And it's very interesting how hard it is to get to a point of quiet where you can hear the voice of God or voice of revelation or your own conscience or whatever. And you know, I think even if had long-standing struggle to be too dependent on the phone, to be constantly checking it, and of course these things are fundamental neurological structures and so on. But it's very interesting, you know, if you try and say, okay, that's it, and I'm putting it away. I mean, it's very, you know, the habits to so quickly, you are reaching in the pocket or flicking the thing open, the habits that we have that will keep us from the solitude and silence. It is in which we comfort. Yes. We have these romantic ideas about revelation and being a monk or whatever, but it's hard to be in the desert, and even if it will later prove to be the place of revelation.
Well, I noticed this with kids too. You know, very often when we took our little kids over to other parents' houses, they would put their little kids and our little kids in front of a TV and have all the little kids watch the TV. And the reason for that was that they didn't want the kids to, and they wanted to amuse the kids, but they didn't want them squawking and complaining while the adults were doing whatever they were doing. But the problem with that was that the kids wouldn't spontaneously generate fantasies in response to the desert. So if you throw kids into the basement, so to speak, and you leave them alone, they squawk and complain about it for a bit. Then they play. And so what happens is they generate this is what happens with children. They generate a fantasy, but they won't do that without a certain amount of privation. And we used to have our kids too. This isn't unique to us, but we'd put them in their room alone, and they would crab about it briefly, and when it first started happening, longer, but eventually what would happen is that, well, their imaginations would ignite, and they'd play with whatever was in there, and they'd get deep into their fantasy play, but the desert ended up distance from the clamor and attraction of the terror. So
I think the overriding lesson, if I just may, which when it hit me was a way of explaining the contemporary world. The human nature and the Israelites are human first. It's very important to remember that. We would all do the same thing.
Yeah. We do
In human, right.
all the time. Yeah.
Human nature does not yearn to be free, it yearns to be taken care of. That is why freedom and free countries are so rare. People don't yearn to be free, they yearn to be taken care of.
Yeah.
And that's,
They'll default to that.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's why America has been a
Hold up. I gotta do this clear first. Like, ooh, do I have some shit to say on this topic, son? Hold up, because this is gonna take like my full concentration. I actually gotta get this cleared. Give me just a moment, boys. Just a moment. You know, fuck all you bitches. You're fucking wrecked. Yeah, that's what I fucking thought. Let me get a safety safe spot. Words are difficult as I get tongue-tied all the time. Yeah. Anyway. Where was that? We were on some important shit. Some really cool. This was some big shit. Hold on, let me roll this back a little bit.
And that's,
They'll default to that.
Yes.
People default to being taken care of. Okay, yeah. Okay, so listen to this, boys. Listen to this. When people claim that they want freedom, they don't want freedom. They want to not be oppressed. They want protection from oppression, not real freedom. Freedom means responsibility because it means having to get, maintain, control, orient, decide everything. Everything. That's what real freedom is like. And there is a core part of every human being that I do think genuinely does crave freedom. But it's a part that gets buried in most people far deep down. It never gets its real expression. When most people say they want freedom, they're not expressing that deep down buried drive in them. They're expressing that they want protection from oppression. They don't want to be forced to do things they don't want to do. They don't want, at least not things that they really don't want to do. And they don't want somebody to take advantage of them. That's it. They don't want all the things that actually come with freedom. They don't want real freedom. They just want protection from oppression. That's it. I think that's an important thing to understand about people. It helps you recognize a lot about why the world works the way that it does.
Yeah.
And that is why America has been in the sense of such an outlier in human history, a free country, a big free country. And that is why it is very hard to sustain because, again, people yearn to be taken care of.
And no wonder, especially when they're in the desert. So now,
even when they're not in the desert, forgive me.
Fair enough.
We're not in the desert in America, and people yearn to be taken
Well,
care of.
Stephen's point with the phone, I was thinking, we don't know how addicted we are to the phone away for a week, and you watch your hands move. Like, it's all in our nervous systems, and that's a tyranny. That's a lack of freedom. If you're free to do whatever, you could sit down and read.
And the itch is perfect because the image of murmuring is a beautiful image of the people murmur, like the people, it's like grumbling. We don't have what we should, like a drug addict that is like, I need my hit.
I agree with the second part of it. To put those two together.
I think the number one is yearning to be taken care of. I think the founders of America knew that, and they tried to protect liberty.
I think more foundational actually is the desire to be free. But again, it's buried the way that most people's, deep inner truths are buried. It's the reason why, wise people from fucking literally millennia ago, like establishing like the Hindu culture, for example, Hindu religion, have explained that what was I about to say? I'm losing my train of thought as I'm trying to say it. That you must contact and honor your inner child in order to reach the heights of your potential, in order to live a fulfilled life. The inner child is the part that actually does yearn freedom. But again, it's buried so deep under all the layers of conditioning and self-delusion and, material concerns of survival and, social jockeying. Like, it's buried deep. It is more primal. It is a deeper, more foundational aspect of who we are. But it is not one that is commonly exposed to the light of verbal expression.
As best as possible, most especially by dividing powers, because they knew, as you had mentioned, Lord Acton, they knew that power corrupts. What I said
maybe
is...
it's that the cost of freedom is responsibility, right? So you have to think that even people do use...
Absolutely, that's true.
That there's a cost for it.
Yes, I will give you free, and then add on any noun you want,
Oh, I agree
and
with the
they will
second.
be elected. But it's from Mephistopheles. It's a diabolical deal. I'll give you X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and D. You give me your liberty.
Oh, there is a counterposition to that. I mean, you can appeal to people politically even within the current political landscape, stating that there is something better than your political system than mere security and comfort, and that you may lose something by taking that gift. There's lots of people to whom that message also appeals to,
I
as you
agree,
know.
and I suspect they're at this table.
Well,
That's right.
all right,
I would
so
agree, probably
shall we,
true.
Shall we proceed? Okay. Then said the Lord, this is relevant to our discussion, that a revelation of something of value can occur in the wilderness if the wilderness is accepted, if the desert's accepted. Then said the Lord, it's a good way of understanding manna. Then said the Lord unto Moses, behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you. It's a very particular kind of bread, heavenly bread. And the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day. You can't store this up, right? You can't keep it. You have to be open to it. Yeah, and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them, whether they walk in my law or no. So they're willing to be, in the desert, you have to be continually acceptant of the revelation of the day. It's something like that. And it shall come to pass that on the sixth day they shall prepare that which they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. That keeps the cosmic rhythm of the sun. At even, then you shall know that the Lord hath brought you out from the land of Egypt. And in the morning, then you shall see the glory of the Lord. For he that heareth your murmurings against the Lord, and that's the whole blind crowd, right, crabbing away. And what are we, that ye murmur against us? And Moses said, this shall be, when the Lord shall give you in the evening flesh to eat, and in the morning bread to the full, for that the Lord heareth your murmurings, which ye murmur against him. And what are we? Your murmurings are not against us, but against the Lord. And Moses spake unto Aaron, say unto all the congregation of the children of Israel, come near before the Lord, for he hath heard your murmurings. And it came to pass, as Aaron spake unto the whole congregation of the children of Israel, that they looked toward the wilderness. They looked toward the wilderness, and then, behold, the Lord appeared in the cloud. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel. Speak unto them, saying, at even ye shall eat flesh, and in the morning ye shall be filled with bread, and ye shall know that I am the Lord your God. And it came to pass that at even the quails came up and covered the camp. And in the morning the dew lay round about the host. And when the dew that lay was gone up, behold, upon the face of the wilderness there lay a small round thing, as small as the hoarfrost on the ground. And when the children of Israel saw it, they said one to another, it is manna, for they wist not what it was. I presume manna has some relation to mysterious. And Moses said unto them, this is the bread which the Lord hath given you to eat. This is the thing which the Lord hath commanded. Gather of it every man according to his eating, an omer, a certain measure, for every man according to the number of your persons. Take.
It's funny that I don't know if he correctly does so here, but he calls manna as like something that is mysterious. I mean, I don't think that part's right, but the fact that like he presents it as like kind of like the primary aspect of what it is, I don't know if that part's correct. But it's funny that he does, because manna is something gamer knows is a reference to magic. And magic associated philosophically with the occult. And the occult, the research and understanding of the occult is the dissection of the great mysteries. So and they call the manna mysterious. So I don't know if that was intentional. I don't think it was, though. But maybe it was intentional. But maybe we just have a convergence of indicators aligning here through his speech.
Take ye every man for them which are in his tents. And the children of Israel did so, and gathered, some more, some less. And when they did mete it out with an omer, he that gathered much had nothing over, and he that gathered little had no lack. They gathered every man according to his eating. And Moses said, let no man leave of it till the morning. Don't keep it. Notwithstanding, they hearkened not unto Moses, but some of them left it until the morning. And it bred worms and stank, and Moses was wroth with them. And they gathered it every morning, every man according to his eating. And when the sun waxed hot, they melted. They gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for one man. All the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. And he said unto them, this is that which the Lord has said. Tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Bake that which you will bake today, and seethe that you will seethe, and that which remaineth over lay up for you to be kept until the morning. And they laid it up till the morning, as Moses bade, and it did not stink, neither was there any worm within. And Moses said, eat that today, for today is a Sabbath unto the Lord. Today you shall not find it in the field. 6 days shall you gather it. But on the 7th day, which is the Sabbath, in it there shall be none.
I hope you all understand. It's to prevent them from gathering and working to get the manna on the Sabbath.
Okay. Yeah, so what do we make? We've kind of touched on this. What do we make of the fact that this bread appears miraculously in the desert? It's like, well, if you're in the desert, you're open to revelation. There's no period in your life, and your internal tyranny's collapsed, and you're bereft. If you're open, you can find, you may be able to find that which will nourish you even in the desert of the soul. So that's partly what's happening here. And partly, you need to concentrate optimally on the day when you're in the desert. Is available for your nourishment.
The way to understand it, if you want to understand it a little more spiritually or a little more, is to understand that it's the bread that comes from heaven. It's related to the revelation of God. It's right. It says the glory of God appeared in the cloud, and then this bread started to appear in the morning. So the beginning of the day, it's like that's the notion of the daily bread in the prayer, the Christian prayer, which is that when we say daily bread, it's like transubstantial bread is the actual like translation about it. It's as if it's the thing you receive
Transubstantial.
to guide you. It's like a seed. That's why it says it looks like a coriander seed. It's in the seed form, and so it's like
that's sort of sufficient unto the day. Sufficient unto the day.
And so think about sufficient unto one cycle of whatever you want to apply it to. A cycle of a world or a week or a day. In this case, it's a day. Okay. But so then it also has to leave room for that fringe. It has to leave room for that day that you don't. That results in
rest.
That's right.
So one of the things that happens in the Sermon on the Mount is that if they orient themselves properly to God, and so that would be toward the pillars, let's say, if they orient themselves towards God sufficiently, then they can pay attention to the day properly. And if they pay enough attention to the day, the way what reveals itself in the day, that's how to set everything right. And so there's this radical to follow the Spirit of God, and then sufficient unto the day are the troubles thereof, and the revelation thereof.
And so you can, and in the story, it'll become clear a little later when we talk about the quails, but you can see it. It's like a seed and a body. It's a bread that comes from heaven in the morning. And
the fact that it was only 93%, or I only got 1%. That experience of that is fucking annoying as shit to me. And the fact that this guy stopped me from looting that body is also quite annoying. And the fact that my inventory is filling the fuck up is also quite annoying. Fuck the goddamn watermelon. Anywho.
and this flesh that is in the evening. So it's actually a giving body of the day. You start with the seed, you end with the body. You know, and that's it's one of these it's one of the images of this idea that Christ joins the end and the beginning together. I'm Alpha and Omega. I'm the bread and the flesh. You know, I'm the manna and the quail. It's like all together in one space. But this is it's the cycle. Like it's this idea of like moving towards the end of the day. You have the flesh.
I, Jesus Christ, am the complete vision of what it means to embrace the greatest of good. I am the way. That is what's meant. Bless with these freaking stupid watermelon. Give me a water cloth.
The seed at the beginning, the flesh at the end, and then you start over. So whatever world, that's how it works. Like you start with the seed, you end with flesh, with the body, and then
the day, okay, well, that's also partly because this is how things work psychologically. Well, the morning is the horizon of potential. I mean, you wake up and you think, well, what am I going to do today? And then by the end of the day is when the day is over. And so the day has become what it is going to be. And it isn't something new anymore, because that's new thing is the next day. And so we do have this repetition of beginning and end. And so that's your point, is that it's potential and fulfillment and embodiment.
Orientation and embodiment. So you orient yourself in the morning, and then you evaluate at the end.
Right. And then you decide what to embody. So that's part of the prayer idea. So you reevaluate what you've done during the day. You're separating out the wheat from the chaff so that you embody the best of the day. And that's what you do when you recollect it. So remember it's an organization. So that's a really useful way of thinking about prayer. So you go over your. I found a technique that always helped me sleep. If I was having a difficult time sleeping, I would start at the beginning of the day and just walk through the day. And generally, I found that if I did that, then I would fall asleep. And so then it took a little longer. Right. But those were often days too where it's hard to sleep. That was almost an unerring, and I suppose that was the dawning of an impulse, in some sense, towards prayer. Right? If prayer is that recollection and remembering,
and it is that in a daily way here, right? There's people talk about the importance of gratitude journals and things like that. Not just like once every 5 years. Yeah. It's the quotidian, the daily remembrance. This is the daily remembrance of God's goodness. I mean, that's what this.
Gratitude's a great image,
the
though,
gathering
Stephen,
up of
because it's also gratitude is the antidote to bitterness in the most fundamental sense. It's like, and I suppose it's also what can I glean? What can I glean from the day? That's a good prayer at the end of the night, and you do embody that. If that's the conclusion you draw, right, and the moral you extract, and the point for the future, that is the gleaning of what's been offered to you in potential from the day.
And also the orientation of the morning.
In what sense?
Well, in the sense that the man is the morning, is it not? Yeah, the man is in the morning. So you go out in the beginning, this moment of thankfulness, of that is the beginning point of the day, and on
that's
which
like
you live.
The day.
That is actually the sustenance that you need to carry out through the day. It's what allows you to move.
Definitely. Yeah, and you want to be oriented properly for that, or you dread the day too. And so you can see an appropriate prayer in the morning. Obviously, is something like, God grant me the wisdom and ability to utilize this day properly. By the end of the day, and to make that a practice, and so you build yourself out of that which you glean from the day. Right.
I think the greatest poem in English on prayer ever written is called simply Prayer by George Herbert. And I just remembered
I'm intrigued already.
This is how it starts. Prayer, the church's banquet, angels' age, God's breath in man returning to his breath. The soul in paraphrase, heart in pilgrimage. Then just jumping ahead a little bit. The different ways of thinking about prayer. Exalted manner, gladness of the best. Heaven in ordinary, man well dressed. Church, jumping ahead a little bit. Church bells beyond the stars heard. The soul's blood, the land of spices, something understood. It's a And all of those phrases have become almost proverbs in English. But that phrase, exalted manner and heavenly ordinary, is just perfect, because we've seen all these really dramatic instances of God's miraculous intervention. The most obvious, just chapter 14, and 15, but also with the plagues. This is just it's not really an ordinary thing. What provides us couldn't be more ordinary. It's the day-to-day sustenance, as you were saying,
Well, and
Stephen.
it's in tiny little portions too, right? Because
Yeah.
it says like it's hoarfrost, and so you might say, I wonder if that's what I was pointing to in some sense. I wrote this chapter in my first book about stopping to pet a cat on the street, especially if you're in dire necessity, right? It's like one of the things you have to do. And they are
It's not necessarily looking for miracles, looking for sort of miracles understood as just extraordinary or utterly bewildering events. That's probably the wrong
that's why
mindset.
they're tiny.
You often will get some religious, sort of zealous religious believers just looking for
We
certain
picked up
the
another
signs
level,
and
boys.
wonders, as it were, and not being willing just to.
Sorry, I'm talking over. Ah, yeah, boy, another fucking level down, son. That one didn't take too long either, boy. I don't think it took too long at all.
I'm listening.
And I got a fuck ton of money to make now. Yeah, all the linen can go. The food, the red stuff. Actually, I need a little bit of linen probably still. Buy back. Give me 1 stack. I'm going to take this 3. Alright. Oh, wait. Need you to buy the melon juice.
Hello.
Buy the melon juice and the gloves and that cloak. And I missed this red. And then I'll mail off the rest of this. The bank cow. Do 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 do. To be honest, man, I just want to get rid of this. Just take it.
Watch your back.
Just fucking take it. Just fucking take it. Alright. Oh, I have 2 because I've not been spending my fucking talent points like I'm supposed to. Less mana and more reach. That's crazy, son. That's crazy. So usually when I wait till 28 to go to the mines. So let's go repair. And then we'll do a little bit of farming on the lower hand section of the farm in the orchard area. Start really farming that.
Speak, friend. May your
And
blades
then we'll
never
do the
dull.
quests. We'll finish up the quests. And then once the quests are done, I bet we can get like 3/4 of the way off of the kind of time frame and whatnot I'm thinking of. Then we just do the last quarter fucking around the mines, which will then get us to the right level to we might want to just stay where we're at. Probably just keep farming the orchard at 28 because we're gonna have to leave anyway. The moment we hit 28, we gotta port back to Undercity. And then once we get to Undercity, buy out our spells, spelly upgrades, and then we got a hearth back to Terran Mill. And then we gotta goddamn do running with the mines. So yeah, we might as well not add more travel time in. Just stick to the orchard. Get all our levels from there. Or get all of our level from there. And then and do all that I just said. And then go to the mines. It's probably gonna work out better for us. And the mines should give us the speed boost on our living process. Oh my god, the game just crashed. My game just shit the bed, son. This is a good time to go take a quick bathroom break. I think now is a good time for that. So we're gonna take 5 minutes, boys. BRB. Okay, I'm back. Still have not got the game started back up again. My apologies for that. Whoa, we're gonna have to edit this out. My bad. My now playing is not working right now. I don't like that. I'm really not even trying to use it right now. I just don't like that it's not working now. Why you like this? Like, I bet, but watch this, watch this. See, I knew one of them would work. Only wants to let one work at a time. I really do have half of my troubles with this in the midst of streaming right now. Like, I know I'm not like streaming to a lot of people right now, if there's even anybody watching. If there is a bad thing, hey, shout out to you. Appreciate you checking in. Appreciate you saying hi, or maybe saying hi. Usually there's no chat happening, but appreciate you hanging out with me. Alright, no, for real, dude. If anybody is out there, send the update on like people stopping by. It's like really slow. I think I only updates like every 20 minutes or something. So if you hang out for less than 20 minutes, then I probably don't see you. Regardless, I appreciate you anyway. Anyway, that said, know that I'm not streaming to a lot of people right now. I feel like it's not too big a deal really for me to, do some troubleshooting. Let's see what's up with the settings issue. Tried to do this multiple times because it's happened multiple times, and it's a nightmare. Actually, I no longer do feel like doing troubleshooting right now, but that's probably a good thing in this context. But fuck, man, I'm really not trying. I'm really not trying to deal with all that. Fuck me, nah. I'm a hard pass, son. You guys want to see if I'm the only one online right now? Because I think I probably am. Let's check here in just a second. Anyway. Refresh. Xenon is on. He's the only other one. This might be too relaxing for how late night it is, man. I might fall the fuck asleep listening to this shit. God damn, son. This might not have been the right call. Hey, let's shift back to the metal. How about that? Let's go back to the metal. Oh, and yeah, I'm taking a break from the deep thing because my brain is a little fried at the moment. More to do with because of the fact that I've been drinking and it's late, than the fact that I'm really overloaded by the content. But probably is also a decent bit to do with the content. Either way, need a little break, so we're gonna do that for a second here. Also, let's go ahead and see if I can make the metal show up in the fucking now playing thing. Yep, there it is. Oh, the bitch is gonna fuck it up. Yep. Stupid fucking Pat, bro. I'm gonna aim you. Stupid fucking bitch. I'm dying. Oh, coffee, cough, cough. Alright, let's try this again. That was sloppy. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, not by far not my sloppiest, but definitely sloppy. Hopefully we can do a little bit better. Because right now, I'm not sold on these orchard boys being worth their fucking trouble, bro. Yep, we already fucked that up. The orchard's gay. I don't like it. Maybe we will go to the mines. I have misclicked and used a fucking mana pot like an absolute imbecile. Fuck. Yeah, it might be time to call it a night, boys. To be honest with you. Might be a little too fried for this at this point. That was a fat pull, boy. I got, what? Fucking words, 7 of them bitches? 1, 2, yep, 7. That's quite a bit. That's quite a bit in one point, but when could be? Look at the 6%. Alright, let's see if we can pull this off, because I'm about to try some ballsy shit. We smack him. We wand him. We run just barely by him. And then we round up these bitches. Oh, I'm fucked. I'm definitely gonna end up pulling that asshole that unpulled on me. Maybe not. I only managed to get 5 out of that. That's unfortunate. At least it would have been 6 if I was able to keep him, but for some reason he decided very early on that he had nothing, he gave no fucks about me. Just really stupid and annoying. So I feel like the metal could be actually a little bit louder. Got him. Alright boys, yeah, I think that's about all the streaming I've got in me tonight. I want to do a much longer stream tomorrow when it's much later in the day. Not much later, much earlier in the day. And probably do it completely sober rather than drinking. You know, I might have a small glass or two, or which do most of it sober. And then we'll wrap up this chapter of the Exodus series that we're doing with JP and his crew. While we continue our grind. Expect to see me probably, I think I'll probably do level 30, because I'm probably going to mindlessly grind, because it doesn't take me as much mental effort for me to just grind here than it does. It will take me to stream. But yeah, boys, until next time, I love you all. I hope you have a great life. I hope you find all the goodness in the world that you need. Until the next time we meet, if we do, peace.